Okay, I think we got everything going. I think. We'll see. Alright, so this video, we're just going to go through real quick how to get that first print to stick if you're having trouble with it. There's a couple of different things that might actually be the problem, and not every solution applies to every printer. So I'm kind of assuming that you're using the Ender 3. But if you're using a different printer, then it might have a slightly different process for some of the things you might could do. So usually there's kind of just two big reasons why your print doesn't stick the first time. One of them is the bed is greasy. So that was where the cleaning it off with some kind of IPA, some kind of IPA is isopropyl alcohol, or something, clean it off with something. I think some people might use Windex even, although I think Windex might include some silicone in it, and that might not be a good idea. I use IPA. The other thing that might be an issue is the bed itself is not level, and the other part of that is that it's not flat. So it might be kind of level in spots, but not flat all the way across. So one big thing that happens sometimes is you level the bed by the four corners and get them all pretty much level, but then the center is either too high or too low. And so the bed itself is not flat all the way across there. When you're leveling the bed, here's the procedure that I use. So my printer's running, but I just turned it on, so it's not up to heat or anything. You do want to level the bed with both the nozzle and the bed at the printing temperature, or at least close to it. So I need to go in, I'm going to go over here to my knob dial and go to prepare and preheat PLA, because I've got PLA, and then preheat PLA. The options are preheat PLA for the end, which would be the nozzle, and preheat PLA for the bed. I want the one that's just preheat PLA because it'll preheat the nozzle and the bed. So I want to click that, and then my screen here shows a target of 185 and 45. So that's a little lower than I would normally print at, but it'll be close. I normally print at maybe 250. 200 for the nozzle, 50 for the bed, not 250 for the nozzle. In fact, I don't even think the firmware will let you bring this one up to 250 without some modifications. So why you want to do this is you want the any warping that's going to occur because of heat being applied to the bed, you want that to be active while you are printing. And any change in shape of the nozzle, so it might expand a little bit, you want that up to roughly its temperature. So I'm letting it heat up. I use some kind of little sheet of, not super thin, but not like thick. This isn't really cardstock that I've got. It's actually one of the little pieces that came in the kit here. So something that is, I don't know, 0.3, 0.2, well, no, it's not even that. It's less than a millimeter. It's a piece of paper. And I'm going to use this to figure out the height between the nozzle and the bed. You could get, one way I do this, sometimes I don't have it with me, is, maybe I can make it real quick, to take and cut a strip of paper. Let's see if I can do that while it's heating up. It's actually almost up to speed here. So I'm just going over here and cutting off a strip. I might have got it scored enough. This is going to be thinner than what I would normally use. It's a little bit thin, but it'll give you the idea also. It might be easier for you to see. Now, I did remember this printer. This is the one that we built yesterday. I did go in and get these two guide wheels more or less set so that now when the Z-axis moves, it doesn't move one end and then the other one kind of drags behind it. It does a little bit, but not like it was doing. It's much better. What else have I done to it? I did load some filament, well, the sample filament that came with it. I'll show you how to do that also, because there's a couple of little things that are always nuisances to get the filament loaded. And I can show you how to unload filament since it's got some in it. All right, so some of your printers will have a built-in bed leveling routine where it just manually drives to all the corners and tells you to do the paper method and all that. I'm just going to do this by hand. I am going to home Z though, because part of homing or part of leveling is that it is at its printing height. So I'm going to use the trigger here. Actually, I'll home all the axes. So that's prepare, auto home in this one. And so it'll go here, and it'll trigger the Y, and then it'll come down here and hit the Z. Because if you get it all level, and then you don't go adjust where the height of the print starts, then it's level, but it's either too high or too low. So let's see. Oh, the one thing about that is now that it's moved the axes, they're locked. So go to your menu here, and I think it's in prepare. Let's disable steppers. Prepare, disable steppers, so that you can actually move things around. Otherwise, you have to use the move axis knobs and everything to drive it around. This way, you can just push it around. All right. So what I'm trying to do is slide this paper underneath the nozzle and the bed, and I can't do it. It's even for this thin sheet, it won't go. So I need to crank this one to bring this corner lower until I can have a gap there. All right. So now I've got a little bit of drag. I have probably a little more drag than I would like. No, that's actually pretty good. Oh, also make sure your nozzle is clean at this point. If you have done a print or extruded filament out of it, there's a good chance that there's a blob of molten filament on the end of the nozzle, and that will obviously affect what you're doing here. So make sure you've cleaned the nozzle. So we got pretty good gap. Then I'll just go to this other corner. I can already tell that it's too close. Okay. That feels good. And all I'm doing is looking for a little bit of drag. And I use the thinner sheet like this because you can easily feel the drag, but you don't want a whole lot of drag on this thin sheet because that will put it too close to the thing. I would normally have about this size gap. I don't know if you can see that compared to a sheet of paper. I don't know if you can even pick that up really, but this is maybe 2 sheets of paper. All right, then we'll go to the back. Oh, didn't mean to do that. All right, this one was actually a little high. All right, there's enough drag. That one I can hear it dragging across the print bed. Okay, now I'm going to go to the middle, because it could be that this thing is domed and the middle is way high compared to the corners, or it could be sunk down and it's way low. So I just want to see. It's surprisingly flat, so it's pretty flat across there. Normally there is a good heel or a valley right there at the middle when the 4 corners are leveled, but right now this is, I mean, it's really close to flat. It might be a slight low spot here, but it's really not that bad. All right. So now what we need to do, we've got it level. Now if you're printing on glass, then it should be pretty flat. Later on in the quarter, we'll go through a technique where even if you don't have the auto sensor on it, the little probe, we can manually do that and heat it all up, do kind of what we've done here. And there's a routine that we can load into our firmware that will do that process of probing, and you're the probe. So you're sitting there raising and lowering the nozzle at each point, and it's mapping out the bed as you do that. So you really only do that once, and then it stores the data, and you hope that every time it heats up, it keeps that same deformation. So I'm going to call this good enough. So we're pretty level. There's a nice gap between the nozzle and the surface of the bed. It's, you know, a slightly larger gap than a little sheet of paper, and it's not terribly high or low in one spot. If we had turned out this middle was, you know, it's too high or too low and it's not even close, Then, without doing some kind of mesh leveling that I was describing earlier, you would have to either print, somewhere not in the middle, or only print in the middle. Get the middle part level enough to print on and only print there, or only print around the middle. So you kind of lose some of the printing surface of your bed if it's warped that badly and you don't have a way to compensate for it. All right. Let's unload this filament, because this is the filament. We might as well go ahead and put our yellow stuff in there. So let's see if we can get over to the little guy over here. There it is. All right. So on our panel, I need to go to, actually, now that it's heated up, I think I'll just squeeze this and pull the filament out by hand. Until you've heated up the nozzle, though, it's not gonna let go, because it's molten it's melted and re-solidified in the nozzle, and it's not gonna pull out of there. And if you try to drive this, well, this is the drive one. If you try to drive this stepper while the temperature of the nozzle is below 180 or so, it won't even, the firmware won't let you do that. So you do have to have the nozzle heated up if you want this stepper to turn by using the move axis command. What we're going to do is we've heated up the nozzle. We're just going to pinch this and pull out the filament like that. And see, here's kind of the end that was in the nozzle. Oh, not there. Where's it at? There it is. See? So all of this would not come out if you didn't heat it up. All right, let's use go back to the bigger view. Here we are. I'm going to use our Solutech. I've never used this, but let's try it out. They gave us a sticker. Fancy. All right. Now this one's vacuum sealed. PLA is not one of the really bad filaments at absorbing moisture from the air, but even it will. There are some filaments like TPU and I think nylon, any of the carbon fiber type stuff. They will very quickly absorb moisture out of the air, particularly where we live, because there's so much moisture in the air. PLA is not so bad, but it is nice when they're vacuum sealed because you don't know where this came from. If you do get a roll of filament and you start printing with it, and you hear popping, kind of like Rice Krispies with milk on them, then it's got moisture in it, and you're going to have trouble printing that filament. You'll have to dry it out one way or another, or get a different roll of filament. Now this is good here, so they've got it tied off right here, and notice how nice and even all of the windings are. If you get one of these rolls and they're all over the place, there's a good chance that it's going to tangle on you as you're printing. And the cheaper filament a lot of times is not wound very well. So obviously this little piece, it's not going to print that great. So there's, I don't know how many meters of this stuff there are on here, but it's a whole kilogram. So there's many meters, so it will not hurt us to cut this off. And when you cut it off, if you cut at an angle, then that will help us a little bit to get this filament started. All right, so we got to go back to our little, hung it up on our filament rack that's on top. Up here, it's way up here, it's hard to get to. Way up here, I just bolted the filament rack on, and it's just sitting on it up there. Now we got to go back down here. Sorry for so many moving around. All right. Now we have not printed any guides or helpers. We'll eventually print some. All right, so here's the tricky part. We have to squeeze this, and there's a hole right inside there that we have to line this up to get it to go into here. And so it's really just a matter of twisting the filament to try and get it to hit that hole, and getting a little bit lucky. There we go. Now, this one went straight in. A lot of times I actually have to unscrew this because it gets hung up on the edge right inside here. And so I have to unscrew it and slide the filament through, then put this over the filament and screw it back in. This time it actually hit the target. We got a good sharp angle on the point of it, I guess. Now don't forget that the filament needs to be all the way at the end down here. So run it manually through all of here. Some of your printers might have come with a knob on top of the feeder over here, but mine didn't. So I'm just going to manually slide it until it, all right, yeah, it's actually coming out the end over here. Why don't we raise the nozzle? I'm just turning the lead screw a little bit and helping it out. It squirted out a blob of the old filament. Actually, I don't want any of that white, so let's just manually feed through some until we've got our yellow coming out. There we go. It's a light yellow now, but it'll eventually work all the white out. Anytime you change filaments, there's going to be some amount of transition between the old color and the new color. All right. We need to go to Cura and have something to print. So here's Cura, and I don't know if I have a sample. I don't have anything there. Cura probably has some built-in models, but I don't know where they might be. Well, let me get some kind of got Facebook. Get the Thingiverse. Try to get it on the screen. Just so the SD card that came in your printer does have sample models on it, but the sample that I know that's on there is a really long print. I don't want to take that long to print. It's like 3 hours or more, maybe more than that. So I don't want to print that. Oh, where did we? Oh, that coin was on the other printer, wasn't it? Yeah. All right. Let's try that coin again. That was the SD card popping in. Oh, so here's what's on the SD card. You've got user manuals. I think Cura is actually built in here. Yeah, Cura is in here. There's some manuals, a lot of information on the SD card that came with it. And this test dog is the one I'm talking about. It's a really long print, so I don't want to use it. I want to put something else on there. Why did it not search for coins? All right, there we go. Let's get that one that we had last time. I guess I already had it downloaded somewhere. Now that I think about it, it should be the one thing that I do have. So I can find it. Oh, but I have a lot of... Oh, there it is. All right. So it is just this coin. And remember, it was in 3 pieces. We're just doing the top piece. So there it is. So there are actually some things you can do here to help out with that first print sticking. And they usually involve build plate adhesion. So on all of these in Cura, let me make sure you're looking at the same thing I'm looking at. Yeah. So in Cura, all of these have this little gear icon, and you can click on that, and there's a whole bunch of other options that you can add to it. So for now, don't get too worried with that. Just look at the drop down, and there's 4, well, one of them is none, but there's 4 things you can choose from. And let me tell you briefly what they are. Skirt makes a few laps around the part that you're about to print before it actually gets to the printed part. That's usually what I use, and I use those laps that it's making. It's printing out material, kind of tracing around the part, and I use that material to determine if the part is going to stick. So I can go in and manually adjust the bed level as it's printing this skirt. Brim is similar, except it attaches those things to the part that's going to be printed, so you have to peel them off later. This is good if you have a really small part that doesn't have a lot of area that's going to stick to the bed to begin with. This brim will give it more area to stick with. Raft, this is one thing you can do if you have a bed that's just really warped. So it's really high or really low into the spot you want to print. If you print a raft, then the raft kind of absorbs all of that unevenness, and it takes a lot longer to print a raft, right? But it basically builds this raft underneath the part you're going to print and print your part on top of the raft. So by the time the raft is finished printing, all the unevenness of the bed has kind of been absorbed in the raft, and your print can start on a nice level surface. It just takes a lot longer. I'm just going to use skirt. This coin has enough area that it should be able to stick on its own. It doesn't need the brim. The bed didn't seem really warped where I need a raft, and it's not a super tiny part. A lot of times you have super tiny parts, you have to print them on a raft. So I'm going to do skirt. And then I could go in here, and there are all kinds of skirt options that I could, or somewhere down here. I don't even see where they're at. But there are, we could have more layers of skirt. I think it's going to do 2 or 3 laps before it prints the part now. So that build plate adhesion is one thing that you can do on the slicing side. So when I slice this, you'll see the raft. If I preview it, not the raft, the skirt. There's 3 traces that it's going to make laps around the part, and I have those 3 laps to figure out if the bed is level or not, and make any little fine tunings. Check it's always good. I didn't do this last time, but it's always good to go and preview your part to see what you're going to print. That looks okay. Might have some really thin spots, but it looks okay. All right. And now we've got yellow filament too. So let's slice this. Let's save it on our little SD card. Eject that. And then move Cura out of the way. So let's see. I've got to go down here. Put our SD card in. I noticed they're upside down now, so they've actually, in this model, they've rearranged the configuration of where all the ports are. All right. I'm going to clean this bed off. So I've been touching it, and there's all kinds of stuff on it. So clean that, at least the center part. Other things you can do to the bed. Now this has got a tacky, or not a tacky surface, but a surface that's made for printing. If the surface you're printing on doesn't adhere well to the particular material you're printing, you can coat the surface with glue stick. Some materials, like if you happen to be printing with PETG, then you need this, but not to keep it from sticking. You need this to keep it from not sticking. So this is kind of a release agent. And so if you're having issues, you can always try putting a few coats of glue stick down. Some people print on blue painter's tape. It has a nice texture to it for capturing prints and getting them to squish down. So those are 2 things that you can try if you're just not getting it to stick on whatever you're printing on. That other printer that I had the other day has glass. A lot of times on that glass I'll use glue stick. If you can get away with printing on nothing, then it's kind of nice because you get the texture of whatever is underneath it. So glass gives a really shiny print surface, and this will give kind of this kind of rough textured, kind of like the painter's tape. There are some sheets that have other patterns on them too, and you'll get that pattern on the print if you don't have to apply any glue or whatever. All right. Now, I have print from TF. I don't know exactly what TF means, but that's this card. It's the SD card. And we're going to do CE3, so Creality Ender 3, coin 2. And it was already heated up a little bit, but it's got to go to 50 degrees for the bed, and I think I have it printing at 200 for the print. Let's see. Yeah, I have it at 200 Celsius for the nozzle, so it's got a little bit of heating to do before it'll hopefully print. Now there are going to be a few other things that later on we'll cover. I just wanted to go ahead and, it seemed like people were trying to print and they were having a few issues and didn't want to really wait until Tuesday to do some of these things, or weeks from now to do some of these things. So go ahead and do just the basics. But there are some other things like the manual mesh leveling. We'll put the automatic sensor on here. We'll put a glass bed on here. We'll put a PEI sheet. That's I don't remember what PEI stands for, but it's a material that actually bonds to the filament when it's hot, and then when it's cooled down, it releases again. So it sticks really well while the bed is hot, and then when the bed cools down, it releases. We'll put that on there. We'll turn on some options in our firmware to help with this process too. All right, so here it's going through its homing routine. We'll modify the G code to do exactly what we want to do. We'll do a lot of stuff, but let's just get it to print. I don't know if you remember what the other printer sounded like, but it started out this loud. This one's actually kind of loud. And then they get much quieter when we start doing stuff to them. So this looks good. This is kind of what now I'm feeling of it, and it's humped quite a bit. So that means that it's not really squishing into the bed. So I'm probably going to have to raise the bed up a little bit. All right. Yeah, I'm going to raise the bed on all four corners because it's just not squishing it down enough for me. In fact, you can see where it didn't, or can you see? I don't know. It's hard to show what's printing. But what I'm looking at is, are these squished down, not transparent? You don't want them squished to where the point they're transparent. That's actually going to create more problems with clogging. But I want them kind of flat. I don't want them like rounded up. And I obviously want them to stick pretty well. That looks pretty good. I actually probably want to go back and add a few more skirts until this is dialed in. This one did 3, and it didn't quite give me enough time to figure out exactly what I wanted. So maybe I want 4 or 5 laps around there to get it just right. But I think it's going pretty well. Another good tool to have that I didn't mention the other day, I mentioned the tweezers and the spray. Another one is a flashlight, so that you can actually see under there. There are even LED kits that you can add to it. I didn't actually get one of those. Maybe I should get one so you can see what they do. But just lights to be able to see under there. So usually I just use a flashlight. All right. I don't think you want to sit here while this thing actually finishes printing, but it does look like it's doing okay. Everything's stuck down. We did a little bit of adjusting as those skirts were printing. I did not use either of our other things, painter's tape or glue stick, but if it kept failing, I would probably go to the glue stick next, just to try and get it to give it that glue stick kind of fills in a little bit of gaps, and it is glue, so it gives a little bit of tackiness to it, but it's mainly kind of leveling everything out and giving that little bit of tackiness. But I think we'll be okay. This build, I think this is a build tack surface or something like what's called build tack, and it's generally pretty good, assuming you get everything level and even on the print. So hopefully that'll give you some clues on things to try to get those first prints to stick. And then we'll come back, or I plan to come back on Tuesday, but if you have some other questions before then, let me know, and maybe we'll do another little quick video like this. Actually, this ended up 30 minutes long, but whatever. I'll see you on Tuesday.